blood grouping is a very interesting topic, and when it comes to how surgeon's life, the knowledge of blood grouping, the antigens, antibodies are very essential in order to ensure appropriate blood is being given to a right patient. Alright, so for every single doctor, the knowledge, a thorough knowledge of antigens and antibodies relevant to blood cells is absolutely critical, friends. Now, I have purposefully taken this topic and I wanted you guys to learn this topic in an elaborate manner. So I have literally overstretched what has been given in your conventional Guyton and Genong textbooks. Why? The reason is, mere information about blood cell antigens is not just sufficient when it comes to transfusion medicine fundamentals in this era and these days. So times have changed. We can't just keep ourselves restricted to the very fundamental data alone. Alright guys, so what was once a mere blood transfusion has now turned into a complete specialty by its own, called a transfusion medicine. So as a first year MBBS student, not just knowing the data for your examination is going to be okay for you. You also need to be very familiar and clear about the concepts behind antigens and antibodies in blood relevant to blood cells, and how and why it is very important when it comes to transfusion of a blood for a patient, guys. Now, when it comes to blood cell antigens, you need to first throw off the idea that whenever it comes to a blood grouping or blood cell antigens, it is only about RBC antigens, it is only about RBC grouping. That concept must be eradicated from your mind. Please understand, when it comes to antigens of blood cells, we have antigens seen in red blood cells, antigens seen in white blood cells, antigens seen in platelet cell membrane. More than that, plasma proteins, albumin, globulin, fibrinogens, and certain other plasma proteins, they also exert this antigenic nature. Right, doctors? So whenever you move across to understand blood cell antigens in toto, please remember, it is not all about RBCs only. It is also about white blood cell antigen, platelet antigen, as well as the antigenic nature of plasma proteins. So anything can cause mismatched transfusion reactions. Anything can cause antigen-antibody reaction between a transfused donor blood and the recipient's blood. So apart from RBC mismatch, please understand there is also a possibility of WBC mismatch, platelet mismatch, as well as plasma protein mismatch. Anything can cause consequences and catastrophes. You got to be aware of it. Alright people, your first year university exams will be revolving around RBC antigens only. I warn you guys, that information alone is not sufficient. It is essential and crucial that you have to understand the antigenic nature of other cells as well as plasma proteins. Now, when it comes to an antigen, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by an antigen, doctors? You would have learnt this in immunity videos as well. Let me just brief it for you guys. Anything which is having a structural repetitions, alright? For example, a particular structure which has got a tendency to trigger antibody production is called epitope, alright? Any particular structure which has got a tendency to trigger antibody production is epitope, and if this epitope continuously is seen in a cell membrane or part of a cell membrane or any protein, whatever it is, guys. When you see repeated appearance of such epitopes, we call that product as an antigen. Now, when can you see repetitions? Only when you have carbohydrates or proteins, you can able to have the repetitions, doctors. Now, in a polysaccharide chain, understand this, in a polysaccharide chain, let us consider a polysaccharide chain is made of glucose, galactose, lactose, fructose. Now, in this chain, if you consider, let us take up glucose and galactose has got the tendency to trigger antibody formation. Now, in a polysaccharide chain, if you consider, if you keep seeing this sequence, for example, the next molecule is sucrose and the next molecule is glucose, galactose, and then we have maltose, and again a molecule of fructose is here, and then again glucose, galactose. So if you see this epitope getting frequently repeated, the epitope is getting very frequently repeated. Now such a kind of polysaccharide chain has got the antigenic property. That is exactly how a carbohydrate chain can act as an antigen.